So, hi! Kumusta po kayo? I hope you're okay. So, ngayon po ay Thursday morning. Holiday po ngayon. It's May 13 po ata. And gusto ko po makipagkwentuhan sa inyo dahil na-miss ko kayo. At saka po itong topic na pag-uusapan po natin ngayon, matagal ko na po gustong gawin to. Kasi parang may intriga po ako sa topic na to. And alam ko po na gusto rin po niyo itong topic na to. Sana po magustuhan niyo yung topic natin. So I've been searching about this topic for days na yung pinag-iisipan ko kung maaprobahan ito niyo na i-publish. But then, all I did was to research para ma-share ko po sa inyo yung mga na-research ko. And I think it's one of the interesting topic these days. So, nag-research po ako and sana po hindi man perfect ang aking pag-narrate or pag-share sa inyo. Medyo may maibibigay din po akong information. So, welcome to Diwata Garcia's YouTube channel. Usap po tayo. Let's talk. So, ano na po ba ang balita sa West Philippine Sea? Ang tawag po nila rito sa Tagalog ay Karagatang Kanlurang Pilipinas or Dagat Kanlurang Pilipinas. So sa haba po ng na-research ko, talaga pong sinulat ko po siya. So, ang dami ko pong nababasa about the West Philippine Sea at sa Scarborough area na sinasabi nila, ang daming issues. But then, wala po akong masyadong alam dito. So, I began researching, ano po ba to? Bakit po napakalaking issue po ito sa ating bansa? Bakit po kailangan natin itong area na to? Gano'n po ba ito ka-importante sa ating mga Pilipino? So, tayo po mga Pilipino, ang Pilipinas po ay puno po ng natural resources. Napakayaman po ng Pilipinas kung tutuusin dahil napakalaki po ng karagatan sa ating kapaligiran. I think isa po tayo sa bansa na may halos puro dagat po ang nakapaligid sa atin at napakarami po nating natural resources. So ito pong West Philippine Sea is very rich in natural resources. Like marami po siyang isda, napapakinabangan po siya ng ating mga fishermen. It's also rich in, I think they said it's rich in oil, ribs, and so gusto ko po i-share sa inyo yung mga research ko. As a background po, the first use of the term West Philippine Sea by the Philippine government was as early as the year 2011. So during the administration of President Benigno Aquino. Ang naming po nito was intended as symbolic gesture to dispute China's sovereignty claim over the whole China Sea. So ibig sabihin po, nagkakaroon ng sovereignty claim ang China dito sa West Philippine Sea. So, sino po ang unang tumuntong sa West Philippine Sea? Ferdinand Magellan was the first European to navigate the Philippine Sea. It was Ferdinand Magellan in 1521. So, ito po yung na-research ko. Who named it? Ano po ang ipinangalan ni Ferdinand Magellan sa West Philippine Sea? Mar Pilipinas. So, pati po ako, habang nag-research po ako, talaga po, natututo po ako at interesado po talaga ako sa issue na. When he and his men were in the Mariana Islands. So, nasa Mariana Island ako sila. Prior to the exploration of the Philippines, then, later it was discovered. Sa kanilang exploration, na-discover po nila ito. The other Spanish explorers were from 1522 to 1565. Hindi pa ako pinapanganak nito. Why West Philippine Sea is so important? Bakit po napaka-importante ng dagat kanluran ng Pilipinas. Dahil sa Pilipinas, ang West Philippine Sea is very important dahil it epitomizes the rich marine diversity of this country. Napakayaman po ng area na ito. So they say it has many natural resources, fish. So yung ating mga fishermen, napapakinabangan po nila ito as resources, sources of life, sources of income, as long as napoprotektahan po ang ating fish, reef. So talagang alagang-alaga po ng ating mga mangingisda ang lugar na ito dahil kailangan nilang pangalagaan dahil dito po sila kumukuha ng kakainin sa araw sa kanilang ikinabubuhay. The West Philippine Sea epitomizes the rich marine diversity of this country. Sadyang napakayaman niya. These habitats not only provide the fish that fill Filipino fishing vessels. So, ang dami po nilang nahuhuling isda dito. At nagdadala po siya ng pagkain sa ating hapagkainan. They also serve as the spawning grounds for schools that populate these laws throughout the Southeast Asia. Ano pong ibig sabihin nila spawning grounds for school? I-research ko po yan. Sino po ang tunay na may-ari ng Spratly Islands? So, ito po ang nabasa ko. Port Borneo is part of the Sabah, a member state of Malaysia that has claimed the Spratly Island. So, ang Port Borneo po is one of the main claimants of the Spratly Islands. Who really owns the South China Sea? Sino po ang talagang nagmamay-ari ng South China Sea? Since the two-day clash of arms between China and the forms Republic of Vietnam South in January, former Republic of Vietnam. Kahit sulat ko, hindi ko maintindihan. In January 1974, the paracels have been firmly in Chinese control. So, ibig sabihin, yung mga paracels na ito ay talagang kinokontrol na ng China. While the Philippines, Taiwan, and Vietnamese holding a port of the area, the Spratly Island. So, in 1935 po, the ROC government also announced their sovereignty claim on the Spratly Island. So, ang ROC government is also having claims over the Spratly Island. So, they say na ito pong Spratly Islands ay inoccupied din ng Japan in the year 1939 during World War II. So, na nagkagera po sa atin noon, that was World War II, ginamit po ito ng Japan bilang submarine base for the occupation of Southeast Asia. So, nakukuha na po natin yung history na West Philippine Sea. So, napakatyaga ko po magsulat talaga. Sana po huwag kayong mabore. So, ano po ang mga major islands ng West Philippine Sea? Sa West Philippine Sea, ano yung mga major islands? Ito, Ava Island, Tito Island, West York Island, Spratly Island, 18 islands, and location of South China Sea. So, bakit po kine-claim ng Philippines ang Spratly Islands? Why do the Philippines claims the Spratly Islands? Because of the assumption that after Japan announced its title in 1951, why that after Japan announced its title in 1951, why it is important? It holds potentially significant but largely unexplored reserves of oil. So, bakit napaka-importante po ng Spratlys Island? So, ibabalik ko ulit. Bakit po kine-claim ng Philippines ang Kalayaan Island Group? Dahil po sa after the Japan renounced its title in the San Francisco Treaty of Peace in 1951. So, bakit po ba maraming nag-claim sa Spratlys Islands? Bakit? How important is Spratlys Island? Because it holds potentially significant but largely unexplored. So, hindi pa siya na-explore. Reserves, see, ng oil, natural gas. So, meron na siyang oil, meron pa siyang natural gas. It is productive productive area for world fishing. It is one of the world fishing means international. Buong mundo po ay nangingisda at nakikinabang dito sa Spratlys Island. Ito pa ang napaka-importante. It is one of the busiest areas of commercial shipping traffic. So sa dami po na nagko-conduct ng business dito sa shipping area na to, napakarami ko pong gustong mag-claim. And so I heard na hindi papayag ang karamihan sa bansa na mag-claim basta-basta ng China ang Spratlys Island because lots of countries are conducting business in this area. This means, pag ito, China ang nagmay-ari ng West Philippine Sea, some countries will have to pay taxes each time they will pass by this commercial shipping area. So, yun ang pinag-uusapan po ngayon. So, ano po ba ang balita rito? So, ang isa sa mga reklamo o mga inihahaing reklamo laban sa China is that China has been transforming the reefs and atolls it occupies by the disputed Spratlys Island and turning them into artificial islands. So, ibig sabihin, parang narinig ko, there have been some constructions and doing some artificial island in the area. Let's wait and see, and I have to research on that. So, China has been transforming the reefs and atolls it occupies by the disputed Spratlys Island. So, dito sila naglalagay ng mga fake island, artificial. So, pinipilit daw na magkaroon ng artificial island sa nasabing area. So, sa year 2014, China began massive dredging operations. So, nagkakaroon na sila ng construction sa sinasabing Spratlys Island and building artificial islands along 7 reefs and transport that they claim as their territory. So, sabi nila, kanila raw itong territory. So, napapakapiyak. Matindi itong issue na to. Sabihin, nakasalalay po nito ang kinabukasan natin sa ngayon at kinabukasan ng mga susunod pang henerasyon hanggang sa 700 years. That's what I read. So, China has been transforming the reefs and atolls it occupies by the disputed Spratlys Island, turning them into artificial islands. Oh. talaga maraming magagalit. So sa year 2014, 2014 pala nag-start ang China ng massive dredging operations. To build artificial islands around 7 reefs that they claim as their territory. So sinasabi ng China na kanila itong teritoryo. The artificial islands have been transformed into significant military facilities. So ginawa na nila itong napakalaking military facilities, including 3 runways, 3 runways that have been used for the deployment of Chinese fighter jets. Oh my. So ito na nga po yung nangyayari sa Spratly Islands. So nagkakaroon na ng constructions ang China dito. But marami pong reklamo at maraming ibang bansa na nagke-claim sa Spratly Island. What are the countries that claim the Spratly Island? Spratly Islands consists of more than 100 islands. So 100 islands pala ang nasa kapaligiran, kabuuan ng Spratly Islands. So sa napaka-rich, napakayaman na area ng Spratly Island, potentially by gas and oil deposits. Meron siyang gas and oil deposits. They are claimed in their entirety by China, Taiwan, Vietnam. So tatlo yung major claimants, China, Taiwan, and Vietnam, while portions are claimed by Malaysia and the Philippines. So isa po talaga tayo sa mga claimants. So the Philippines has asserted its claims in Scarborough Shoal, as well as collection of, so nagki-claim tayo, nag-a-assert tayo ng claim sa Scarborough Shoal, as well as a collection of 50 Spratly Islands. So 50 islands pala ang ating ina-assert sa Spratly Islands. Features which are collection as Kalayaan Island Group or KIG. Grabe, di ba? Ngayon ko lang nalaman to. Kung di pa ako magre-research, hindi ko siya malalaman. Spratly Islands, large group of reefs, shoals, atolls, and small islets in the South China Sea of the Pacific Ocean. They are located north of insular Malaysia. Ngayon ko lang nalaman that they are located north insular Asia to roughly midway between Vietnam. Kita? Malapit sa Malaysia at Vietnam. The Philippines, as they claim, wholly or in part by several countries in the region. So, ang dami talaga nagkiklaim. So, sa year 1970, South Vietnam occupied 3 the Spratly Island. So, sa year 70, inoccupy pala ng South Vietnam ang 3 island sa Spratly, including yung Spratly Island itself. Kasama na yung kabuuan ng Spratly Island. Nabubulol ako kasi excited ako to forestall Chinese occupation. Ibig sabihin, nung nag-try yan China noon na kunin ito, nilabanan na rin sila noon ng South Vietnam. So, ang sinasabi nila, troops from Taiwan remained on Philippines. Remain on Huaba, the Philippines then moved forces into 7 of the remaining islets. So, kinuha pala natin yung 7 remaining islets. Kinuha pala natin yung 7 remaining islets. Ito ang sabi rito. And built as an airstrip in the year 1976 on Asa Island. So, ang sarap matuto nitong history nito. The United Nations Conventions on the Law of the Sea, which came into effect in the early 1980s, established the concept of exclusive economic zones or EEZ that extends 200 artificial miles from a country's coast. Yan. So, ulitin ko. The United Nations Convention on the Law of Sea, which came into effect in the early 1980s, established the concept of exclusive economic zones or ECC that extended 200 nautical miles from a country's coast. Laki nito ah. So they say, in the late 20th century, Vietnam, China, Taiwan, Malaysia, and the Philippines had conflicting claims to their province. So talaga palang nagke-claim dito, kasama natin ang Vietnam, China, Taiwan, Malaysia, sama tayo ron. Meron silang claims. Pero ang sabi nila, ang US daw, which has a dominant presence in the Pacific region, has not recognized the claims of any country. Ibig sabihin, hindi kinikilala ng US ang any claims, and saying that the Spratlys, insisting Spratlys Islands is on international waters. So, ito na yun. Ito na yung part ng Spratlys Islands ng West Philippine Sea. Sino ba ang mga claimants? Ano ba yung atin dito? Anong islands ba yung atin dito? Ilan ba yung islands natin dito? So, nabanggit ko po sa lahat. So, ano ba ang naging cause ng West Philippine Sea dispute? Ngayon ko lang nalaman to. Kasi wala akong alam talaga rito. Naririnig ko lang siya na South China Sea, nandun na yung mga Chinese ships, nagkagulo sila doon sa West Philippine Sea, and lahat tayo busy tayo sa COVID, but then eto na, nasa harap na ng ating mga mata ang problema dito sa West Philippine Sea. Kaya po nag-research ako, and the main reason is gusto ko rin po mag-share sa inyo. What caused the West Philippine Sea dispute? Ano po ba ang dahilan? Bakit nagkaroon ng dispute sa West Philippine Sea? Bakit? Because the Chinese occupation of Scarborough Shoal was an invasion of Philippine territory. So, na-invade yung territory ng Pilipinas, ng ating bansa, ng aking bansa, ng ating bansa, giving rise to a territorial sovereignty dispute. So, ito yung naging dahilan ng mga territorial dispute na hanggang ngayon ay hindi pa po nalulutas at lalo pong lumalaw. However, the Philippines could not bring China to a compulsory arbitration. Hindi po natin mapa-attend o ma-invite ang China sa compulsory arbitration on a sovereignty dispute without China's consent. So, ibig sabihin, pag wala nilang consent at ayaw nilang makipagkaroon ng arbitration with us on the sovereignty dispute, hindi pa rin natin ito ma-resolve. So, last January 22, 2013, the Philippines initiated international arbitration against the People's Republic of China, requesting its territorial and maritime disputes in the South China Sea, known as the West Philippine Sea. So South China Sea and West Philippine Sea is the same in Manila. That was held in Manila. So the Philippines claims that the South China Sea, as part of its territory, the country that claims that their maritime features falls. So ibig sabihin itong maritime features, it falls within ECC, or the Exclusive Economic Zone in the Philippines. So the Philippines claim ECC in the eastern portion of South China Sea. Sa eastern portion is designated as West Philippine Sea for the Philippine government. So ito yun. So anong kiniklaim ng Philippines? The Philippines claim and the eastern portion of the South China Sea. So kiniklaim natin ang eastern portion ng South China Sea, designates as West Philippine Sea. So ito na yung South China Sea. Ano ba naman ano ho itong Scarborough Shoal? Scarborough Shoal is also located in the South China Sea. And the landmarks for ng South China Sea sa Scarborough is makikita sa Palawan Town, Zambales, Luzon Island, west of Subic Bay. So doon makikita itong Scarborough Shoal sa mga landmark na ito sa South China Sea. Napakalaki ng South China Sea. Sa Palawan Town, makikita rin sa Zambales, Luzon Island, west of Subic Bay. The Philippines and China and Taiwan ang nagkiklaim po dito sa Scarborough Shoal. The Philippines said that the country exercises both effective occupation its independence. Thus, it claims to have elected to the National Organization of Fishermen the legal basis. Philippine National Organization of Fishermen as the legal basis of the sovereignty. Yun po ang ating claim. So, nung claim po natin, the Philippines said that the country's exercises both collective occupation and effective jurisdiction over Bahu Jamasin Lock since its independence. Thus, it claims to have erected flags on some islands and a lighthouse. So, naglagay tayo ron ng flags ng Philippines and a lighthouse, which is has a legal basis. But the Chinese basis for the claim is that the Shoal Island have been first discovered by the Chinese. So, ang sabi ng Chinese, sila po ang naunang nakadiscover ng Shoal Island. Noong 13th century pa, and historically used it by Chinese fishermen. So, sabi nila, matagal na pala nilang ginagamit itong Scarborough Shoal. So, eto na. So, nung naging presidente na po si Ferdinand Marcos, Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos later renewed the claim. So, name na naman po siya as per Ferdinand Marcos, and train a number of Moro fighters to claim the territory. So ang ating pong Presidente Marcos ay nagkaroon po siya ng klinin niya po ulit ang nasabing lugar at nag-train po ng number of Moro fighters to reclaim the territory and a secret nation. Named Operation, what's this? Mudika. But the fighters demanded to return home. So, hindi tumuloy mga fighters because they don't want to kill their fellow Muslims. But their request was denied, and so the president executed as is job bida. So yun lang po ang na-research ko. So bakit po pilit ino-occupy ng China ang West Philippine Sea? China intends on occupying the West Philippine Sea as this, I read this last April 2021. In 2016, the International Arbitral relied to invalidate Beijing's South China Sea claims and upheld the Philippine sovereignty rights over its ECC, exclusive economic zone. So kahit may intention talaga ang China na i-claim ang West Philippine Sea, hindi pa rin po sila nanalo. Hindi sila nagwagi. Dahil last 2016, the International Arbitral lied to invalidated Beijing. No. So the International Arbitral replied and invalidated unvalidated Beijing South China Sea claims and upheld that the Philippine sovereignty rights over its ECC. So meron po talaga ang Pilipinas na sovereignty rights sa exclusive economic zone, including reefs on which the Chinese have built artificial islands. So yung kanilang tinutuntungan po ngayon at nilalagyan ng artificial islands at ginawa po nilang military outpost ay sinasabi po na meron po tayong karapatan doon sa exclusive economic zone na iyon. Meron tayong sovereignty rights. Right? But China rejected the decision. So in Rappler, last December 12, 2020, according to Rappler in my research, Justice Antonio Carpio, one of the great former justice, said Sir Antonio Carpio, one of the greatest challenges facing the country today is how to defend and preserve our sovereign rights over the exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. What is at stake is a maritime area larger than the total land area of the Philippines. So ito pong ating kiniklaim ay mas malalaki pa sa Philippines. See? I would like to repeat. One of the greatest challenges facing the country today is how to defend and preserve our sovereign rights in the EEZ or Exclusive Economic Zone in the West Philippine Sea. What is at stake is a maritime area larger than the total land area of the Philippines. Napakalaki pala. The precious oil, gas, other natural reserves. But China were claiming not only mischief reef, hindi lang mischief reef ang kiniklaim ng China, but 80% of exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. Thereafter, China says Scarborough Shoal from the Philippines. So, ibig sabihin, kinukuhan na talaga nila ang Scarborough Shoal from the Philippines ng China following the April to June 2012 standoff between Philippines and Chinese vessels in year 2012. So, nagkaroon pala ng standoff ng China at Philippines the year 2012. But, in July 12, 2016, so, habang nagre-recess po ako, natututo po ako. Gusto ko po yung natututo rito. Dahil napaka-importante po nito sa ating bansa. Para sa ating, sa mga future generations, sa ako po, sa mga maliliit pang bata, sa mga mag-aaral. So, in July 12, 2016, arbitral award that invalidated China has China's 9 has affirmed with finality. In July 12, 2016, arbitral award that invalidated China's 9-line has affirmed with finality that the Philippines has full claim the exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea, and the arbitral tribunal expressly declared that mischief reef is part of the Philippines. So, sinasabi po ng arbitration tribunal and has declared that mischief reef is part of the Philippine economic zone. In short, UNCLOS. Arbitral tribunal has decided with finality that maritime dispute between the Philippines and China in the West Philippine Sea so ito na ang decision na Philippines has the full AZZ in the West Philippine Sea, exclusive economic zone in West Philippine Sea, and the arbitration tribunal has also expressly declared na ang mischief reef ay part ng Philippines. So, atin pala talaga siya. Binabasa ko siya may para mas malinaw. So, the Philippines and China signed last November 27, 2018. So, nag-sign ang Philippines and China last November 27, 2018. And the exploration to cooperate in exploration or exploration oil and gas in the West Philippine Sea under the terms of reference. So, nagkaroon pala sila ng signing ng cooperation na magkaroon ng exploration, exploiting oil and gas under the service contract system in the Philippines. And also, China signed the terms of reference to implement the MOU or Memorandum of Understanding. And a final meeting was supposed to have been held between the Philippines officials and China. Ayun pala yun. Karoon pala sila ng agreement on oil exploration. So, basahin na lang natin yung mga latest na balita. Kasi natakil ko na yung kanyang history, ano ba yung mga islands na nasasakop, ano ba yung mga islands na nasa Scottish Islands and in the West Philippine Sea. So, ano po yung mga latest news? In March 23, Philippines and China intensifies war of ports over South China Sea. So, nagkakaroon sila ng matinding konting problema. And so they say in April 5, 2021, because of China's not withdrawing ships in disputed area. So, Philippines and 5 Chinese officials have been in misunderstanding and in war of words since last month over the presence of nearly 200 Chinese ships. So, ibig sabihin 200 Chinese ships na are situated or docked in Watson Reef. What's this Watson Reef? So, ibig sabihin, meron na last month, meron na nearly 200 ships were first detected in Watson Reef. But Beijing has ignored Manila's demands for the vessels to leave. So, nung pinayaalis na ng Manila ang mga Chinese vessels, hindi pinansin ng China. They ignored our officials' request. So, ito na yung news. And on Monday, the Department of Foreign Affairs backed Lorenzana, Philippine Defense Secretary Lorenzana, and reiterated his call for the withdrawal of the ships, which Manila military says sheltering from adverse weather condition. Yun ang sinabi ng China bakit nakablock ang kanilang mga ships doon sa area na yon, because they are just sheltering from adverse weather condition. Yun ang kanilang dahilan. So one of the news also is that President Duterte met with Chinese ambassador last month over the maritime feud, but the president has not publicly spoken. So ibig sabihin, nag-meeting sila pero hindi pa rin natin alam kung ano ang kanilang pinag-meetingan. And so, ito pa. So, ang dami-dami pong issues regarding this. So, they say that since coming to power in 2011, Duterte has set aside on the maritime disputes and embraced China as an economic partner and distanced himself from the US. So, ang sabi naman dito, China in turn promised millions of dollars of investments and recently donated million doses of COVID vaccines. Ito yung sinasabi nilang dinonate ata last month na ibinalik nila. Oh my God. And recently donated million doses COVID vaccines. So Manila will protect its territorial territorial area in New South China Sea. But Duterte asserts UN ruling with backing from US, Japan, Australia, UK, and Canada. And according to the Philippine Defense Ministers, they have called on China to recall some. So, ibig sabihin hanggang ngayon meron pang 220 militia boats spotted in the disputed South China Sea, saying the presence of the vessels was a clear, provocative action of militarizing the area, according to our official Sir Loren Sana. We call on the Chinese to stop this incursion and immediately recall these boats, violating our maritime rights and encroaching into our sovereign territory. Ito po ang sinabi ng ating high officials. So, napakaraming news. Napakarami kong na-research. Last April 2021, Duterte on Chinese ships in West Philippine Sea. She said, I don't want any quarrel. But last April 13 or 14, 2020, a Chinese Coast Guard patrol was seen near an identified vessel of South China Sea. He said that the Philippines cannot do anything about China's claim on a disputed territory. Ang dami niyang issue. And 6 days ago, the Department of Foreign Affairs protested the illegal presence of Chinese Coast Guard vessels in Panatag Scarborough Shoal and the belligerent action against the Coast Guards. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson says that China enjoys sovereignty over this Panatag Shoal. So, napakarami talaga ng issues. At sa isa pang news, the Philippines sent its strongest response yet against China's expansion into the West Philippine Sea and moved its naval forces to Philippine Sea in coordinated response with the US. Siguro, so napakaraming news about the West Philippine Sea and the latest in May 10, retired Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio, in an interview on Monday, May 10, agreed to statements made in legal circles that the president could be held accountable for downplaying the 2016 ruling that the Philippines landmark victory is a trust, and repeatedly claiming into public address that Beijing was in possession of the West Philippine Sea is an betrayal of public trust and national interest. Yun ang sinabi ni retired Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio. Ang dami yung balita. in Esquire and response, and because of its significantly weaker military capabilities, the Philippines resorted to international law in 2013, filed a case against China in the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, or ITLOS, and surprisingly, a lot of countries supported the Philippines. Ito ata yung ipinail ni President Duterte noon. In this case, the US and its allies and the European Union, Germany, France, and the UK expressed their support to take matter in court. So, ibig sabihin, lahat gusto nila padaanin ito sa legal na paraan. Vietnam, Japan, Australia said that rule of law should prevail over acts of war in resolving disputes. So, napaka-importante ito para sa ating lahat na sundin ang rule of law instead of doing this, making it prevail over acts of war. Ibig sabihin, makukuha naman siya sa maayos na pag-uusap. In resolving this dispute. But finally, in 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration handed out a landmark victory for the Philippines and declared China's 9 lines and claims and historical claims on the entire South China Sea as illegal. So yan. So lahat ito ay na-research ko at napakarami pa pong susunod na issue. So ang mga latest issues is May 10, Rappler, Philippines, a retired Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio, in an interview on Monday, May 10, agreed to statements made in legal circles that the President could be held accountable for downplaying the 2016 Hague ruling that the Philippines' landmark victory is a trust, and repeatedly claimed in public address that Beijing was in possession of the West Philippine Sea. And he agrees in betrayal of public trust and of national interest. So the retired Supreme Court Justice Antonio Carpio is saying that the President could be impeached with his actions. So in Esquire, in response, and because of its significantly weaker military capabilities, the Philippines, so hindi natin kayang labanan ng China, so the Philippines resorted to international law and 2013 filed a case against China with the International Tribunal for the Law of the Sea, or ITLOS. And surprisingly, marami pong sumuport sa Pilipinas in this case. Kasama po ang US and its allies in the European Union, Germany, France, and the UK, Vietnam, Japan, Australia. And so they say that the rule of law should prevail over acts of war in resolving this dispute. So the rule of law should always prevail and not act of war. Ibig sabihin, makukuha yan sa mabuting usapan, sa magandang And finally, in 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration handed out a landmark victory for the Philippines and declared China's 9-dash lines and historical claims on the entire South China Sea as illegal. So lahat ng claims ng China is insignificant and illegal. West Philippines Sea is part of the sea on the north side of the Philippines, in which maritime rights of the country extends. Because all maritime zone its special maritime right in all over the part of the sea. WPS West Philippine Sea. So, napakarami niyang issues siguro. Sa susunod na lang, yung mga susunod na news, kasi napakahaba na. So, I hope marami po akong na-share sa inyo sa video. So, I hope may maganda po akong na-share sa inyo ngayong araw na ito. And I hope marami po akong information na na-share at nagustuhan po ninyo. So, may mga susunod pa po ako